Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Anita with us, and she works as a developmental coach, human behavior expert, and speaker. Anita is a certified and NLP master practitioner, integral semantics theory, Enneagram personality typing work with people to facilitate the change they are usually not even aware is required to live a life more free from the struggles of the mind. Anita, we are so excited to have you part of the Holistic Sister Circle today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here with you.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we had talked about, and I remember when we had our initial conversation, it was so beautiful because we talked so much about relationships and how relationships really affect our quality of life, no matter if it's a friend, a family member, or even if a significant other. Can you just share a little bit with us your story and why you decided to focus more on behavior therapy?
Yeah, so from a very young age, I was very interested in human behavior. I used to quiz people. I just wanted to know all about their lives, and I used to, go around asking people a million questions. And from a very young age, people would, comment on. They would ask me why I was so nosy. And I think there was something within me that, as I watched adults around me, from quite a young age, I noticed that people didn't seem to just be happy. And I just, had this sense that there's got to be more to us as humans. There's got to be more to life than what I was seeing around me. So it's kind of like from quite a young age, I made it this mission that I wanted to be the happiest, best version of a human being possible. And potentially that's why I went around questioning people, because I wanted to understand human behavior, and I wanted to understand potentially how I could, be like some people and maybe not be like others, so that I could be the best version of myself. So it started very young. And then when I got into my 20s, I went to see a therapist. I had some eating disorder struggles and I wanted to go and get those sorted. I spent 8 years in therapy, not talking about my eating issues. They kind of got resolved within the talking of the things that I was, I guess, struggling with, insecurities, maybe not feeling loved. And from there, I just wanted to do the job that my therapist had. I just used to go every week and watch her and want to be in her chair. I wanted to be the one, asking the questions. So after 8 years of therapy, I ended up moving to Sydney and spent the next 9-10 years studying, being around a lot of coaches, and then eventually 6-7 years ago, finding a course and starting to actually study in a more formal way, human behavior and coaching. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so funny that you mentioned that too, as you studied your therapist. What did you learn from those conversations on the other side? Like, what were some of the things that she was doing that really intrigued you?
I think for me, it was more because therapy is quite different from coaching. So she talked a lot less than I would talk now as a coach in a session. But from what I looked at her, and I kind of, for me, it was more around her being able to question people and just sit there and listen to people's stories. So it was just like what I loved to do, but she was doing it as a job. That was her life, and she was getting paid to hear it. And I know some people would sit, often people go, oh my God, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to listen to people's depressing stories? And don't you get like triggered by them? And doesn't it, don't you carry the weight of the their stuff on your shoulders? And for me, it's not. For me, it was more around what a beautiful, way to work, to be able to work with people so that they can feel better than they do at the moment. So I never went away. I don't go away from sessions depressed or feeling sad. For me, it's like, what a great opportunity to see these things and know that I've got some tools that are potentially, they worked for me, so that potentially they're going to work for my clients to help better their lives. So,
No, that's incredible. And through this process and working with your clients and also you going through therapy as well, what are some behavioral techniques that you've learned just along this journey And how has that really made you a better coach in this space?
So the number one thing that I really took away from one of the first days that I started studying human behavior was something that we're potentially going to get into a bit more into, which is shadow work. So we'll obviously go into the depths of this in a little while, but shadow work is all around seeing what triggers in you and seeing it in someone else, and then realizing that it's actually not them that's triggering me, but it's myself that's triggering me in the face of their behaviors. So this was life changing for me to start to see that when I see someone who's acting in a certain way, they may be being, say, let's say selfish, or they're being, they're not, whether it's jealousy, anything like that, any of those behaviors. A big one for me was, someone someone who's really disagreeable, which is something that I do a lot of, right? And it was really learning through that process that those people, we say it's the people, that they were really triggering me, but then starting to realize through this work that it isn't them, it's their behaviors that are actually my behaviors that I don't like about myself that are the problem. And so that was for me, like, I literally got that very quickly in the first, few days of the training, and it's big confronting stuff, right? And, in those moments of that realization of all of this, it was kind of, feeling very confronted and quite, emotional about that. But then through that process is the realization of the absolute freedom at the other side of that, when we, when I could just recognize that, when someone's being judgmental, let's say, that it's actually my own judgment of self that is the thing that's triggering me and not their words. So it's kind of like this whole thing that I like to, as I work with people, it's this whole self-responsibility part, which can be very hard for people to get, and it's not for everyone. And so we're so conditioned through life to blame other people for how we feel, because that's all we know to do. Of course, it's going to be them that's making us feel a certain way. It can't be me making myself feel like that. They're the ones that have said something to me. And then this realization that no, there's this choice point that's very small, a tiny millisecond of choice where I decide whether I'm triggered in the face of, them or their behaviors or not. And then going, okay, where is that me? And so, 101, that would be definitely the most life-changing thing, that each time I'm triggered by something, going, it's not them, so what's going on for me right now? Where's that a part of me that I'm not recognizing potentially?
Wow. And, Anita, I'm so grateful that you're sharing this, because I think so many people, not not everybody is in the percentile of wanting to change and wanting to
Sure.
look within themselves to make those changes. For the clients that you've worked with, or even maybe your own experience with this as well, was there anything within that moment that you realize, wow, I have to change, or my client has realized they have to change and doesn't want to? And how has that affected maybe their relationships with their self or their family or their friends or spouse? Like, what did that look like?
What, as in resistance to change?
Yes, when it comes to having that shadow work and knowing, like, wow, this is like, Anita's telling me this is a reflection of me, but it's too deep, or it's too painful, or I really don't want to go down that route to discover it. So I'm just going to keep doing
Yeah.
what I've been doing.
So I think what the way that I see it is for myself, initially when I learned about this stuff, there was resistance, when other coaches would, pull me up on stuff and say something, my natural thing is to defend. That's part of my programming. That's part of the stuff that was, worked on through the process. So it's that natural thing to go into defense, no, that's not me or whatever, and then to go away and very quickly reflect on it and go, yeah, that is me. So with my clients, everyone's different. Some people will be more on the people pleasing side, let's say. That wasn't me. And so for the people pleasers, they may absorb it and kind of go, yes, I see that. And then they may go away and have a bit more of a process. And then further down the line, they might admit that they hated me in that moment. But usually they'd go, oh, yeah, when you said that, But now we can really see, obviously, the benefits of that, and the change in, you know, relationships, and the people that you kind of go, I've got to stay away from them. I just want to be around like-minded people. They're not like me. Well, it's kind of like the realization they're actually a lot more like me than I realized, because it is only me that I'm seeing in them. So for people, it can be like, you know, we start to socialize with people that we want in our lives, but we were so triggered by before because we didn't realize it was us. And then there's some, you know, some clients, some, you know, some people that this is too hard for them, so they don't stay in the process of coaching. It's well, not with me anyway, and that's just
Right.
a, you know, that's just a thing that's absolutely fine. You know, I can see that there's many people in the world that their ego strength is not at a place where, you know, it's too painful to even see this concept as something that could be true, and that's absolutely fine. You know, if there's ever been clients that have, you know, we've stopped working together because of that, then, you know, all I do is encourage, you know, anyone to go and find someone where that the work of the, what we call it, an earlier stage work, you know, resonates more with them. It might be therapy versus the type of coaching that I do, for example. You know, I went through a therapy before I got to being coached. It's a stage process. It was a lot more gentle therapy for me than coaching has been. So there's a place for everything, you know. So it's finding the stage that we're at and the person that we want to work with, and not everyone is for everyone. So there's never any offense taken. It's just going compassion to that human being. I can see from my own, you know, triggers around it. I can see how painful it could be for them, but they may not have done 8 years of therapy work before, you know. So
Right.
yeah, it's yeah, yeah. It's big stuff. Big stuff. And also people may not have had the trauma, let's say, that I had. In whatever reason, I wanted to do this work. You know, I made it a mission from a young age, as I looked around going, I want to, you know, I want to be self-responsible. I want to be better than I am. People don't have that from an early age, then they're coming into this a lot, you know, a lot fresher. So it is going to be more confronting than someone like me. You know, it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And this actually goes into some of our segment topics for today. So the first one I wanted to share was around harleytherapy.co. This was an article from the mental health blog, and it talks a little bit about here about just shadow work. So we all have a shadow self, it says. It is generally made up of the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable. For many people, this means things like our sadness, rage, laziness, and cruelty, but you might also see as uncivilized and unacceptable things like your personal power, your independence, or your emotional sensitivity. Of course, some of us don't realize we have a shadow side as we feel ashamed and lack of self awareness. We have not yet taken the journey of self and instead project our own shadow onto others around us. We are sure it's them who has the problem, not us. And that's literally what you were just saying, like the projection of putting people in a place where you're projecting your feelings or emotions on them. Have you ever been in a situation where someone has done that to you? And how did that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it happens in life all the time, right? So I guess in my early years, you know, I would do what any normal person does, which is defend. Um, but obviously, in more recent years, the conversations that tend to happen now is when someone's coming with something that I've done. My
Mm.
response is, what's going on for you right now? And then they'll carry on. No, you did this when you did this and you did, and I was like, this isn't something that I'm experiencing. So what is it? It can only be yours. You know, someone said something to me the other day about something that I had done, and it was apparent what I had apparently done, and it was so left field to me. It was like, oh wow, is that your interpretation of that? So it can't be me. It wasn't, that wasn't true, but it's obviously the way that they've programmed it. You know, they've this is what we do. We reach for our childhood programs, and they, you know, they're the ones that help us see the world. You know, we see the world through the lenses of our 7-year-old, pre-7-year-old selves. So when someone's coming with something, and it can be kind of like, oh wow, that's really interesting. For me, that's kind of that interest of going, is that how you view these things? So even when there's times where it might be a bit triggering for me and I kind of want to go back to that old defending part, it just inside it may be rumbling, but I know within me this isn't about me. So the question that I will ask, and I always encourage my clients to ask, is put it back, give it back to them. What's going on for you? And they'll keep going, and they may keep going on about me, me, me. But if I keep just not defending, then eventually people will circle back round and probably be quite confused. Confusions of, when you're not defending, it's like, this is a bit weird. Why isn't this person defending themselves or taking response? Whatever it is, it's just I want to understand what's going on for you. And eventually they can circle back round to something and either feel very confused or maybe have some sort of realization in that moment. So it's for me to have a situation like that and get to the end of it and go, that didn't need to be a conflict, shows the real power of this work. Because I'll often say to clients, just go away and ask them what they meant by what's going on for them. And my clients will go, it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. I know what they're like. They're just going to keep coming at me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, have you ever tried to say what's really going on for you? And they'll go, no. And I'm like, so what you're doing is you're taking past experiences where you used to defend yourself and now you're hearing their response and you think they're going to respond in the same way. If you change the way you're showing up, I guarantee there'll be something different in that conversation. And every time, and they've held their ground, what's going on, they've come back and gone, yeah, that was a really different conversation. A really honest, open and more true conversation at the depths of what's happening, not just on the surface of a story of when you didn't answer the text message. What's going on for you when I didn't answer a text message? You don't care about me, don't think, well, that's not true for me. I was busy that day. So what's going on for you? Oh, I feel unloved. I feel like you don't care about. And then you start getting to the depths of real conversations rather than arguing about what time the text was sent and what I was doing, all of this, the defending, right, that we do.
That's so helpful. And just that statement right there will save so many relationships because
For sure.
we literally you're right. Like we do focus on more of the defense and we don't think about it that way of like, how can we put this back on the other person to get them to open up even a little bit more? I love
Yeah.
that. Now, I also wanted to go into, we have another one here. So another article here from Daily Om, Mindfulness and Meditation Journal. People are swearing by the benefits of shadow work journaling. Now, we talked about what is shadow work already. In this particular article, it talks a little bit about meeting your shadow. So this process is reintegrating your shadow is called shadow work. The aim of shadow work is to recognize those negative personality traits within yourself, reintegrate them into your understanding of who you are, and accept them as part of you rather than denying their very existence. Shadow work is often done with the guidance of experts such as therapists or religious practitioners. And the benefits of this process is that it can help you to become more compassionate with those around you. Your shadow tends to show up in the form of projection or disliking qualities in others that you actually despise about yourself but are unable to recognize, which we've talked about already. And then it goes in talking about the different types of just how to actually do shadow work, journaling, right? Can you talk a little bit about what this looks like for you and your clients as well? So in the article, it talks a little bit more about emotionally grounding yourself, creating a compassionate environment, setting your intention or choosing prompts, finding a meditation practice. Are those some types of shadow work that you agree with as far as being able to journal this experience? Or what are your thoughts and takes on that?
Absolutely, all of those. And what I would add to those is work with a professional, because you're not necessarily going to see, we're not going to see all of our stuff. So I would add, if I'm going to add stuff to the list, it's, seek, a shadow coach or, human behavior coach or whatever you want to do. But also what I would add to that, and this is first and foremost how I work with people on this, is as you are with someone, notice for yourself where you get triggered. So what I work with people on is they'll come into a session, they'll go, right, I was at work today and my boss was really pissing me off. They were asking me to do all this stuff. They were criticizing the work that I'd done and all the rest of it. And I can see that there's a trigger going on for them there. And I'm then going, okay, what's going on for you in that moment? And they might go, oh, they're just really judging me. They're so judgmental, blah, blah, blah. And in that moment, it's like, are you now judging them for being judgmental? Because this is how it shows up, right? They're an ass or whatever it is. And then there's shadow working in the moment. So this is the beauty of it. We'll often go, that person was so disrespectful. I can't believe that. I hate them. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, how respectful are you now being in the face of their disrespect? And obviously you can imagine how this gets people's backs up. So you've got to kind of watch who you're saying this to and how you say it. But this is the first thing. This is seeing is that our shadow arises in the moment. So often it will arise right there and then, but we don't see it. So as I work with my clients, the number one thing that we work on is to be able to watch ourselves in the moment or on reflection of what was triggering us in the moment. And then you can go away and journal on it, but then you've got something really to journal on. It's like, what was going on for me in that moment? What was the behaviors of that person that I wasn't liking? Where might that be me? And that's the confronting part. And people go, well, I don't act like that to that extreme. It's not about extremities. It's about a behavior that's playing out. And then the question is, well, is it okay for you to be judgmental? And then they're like, no, that's an awful trait to have. I can't be judgmental. And there's where the shadow is. So can you accept that you're a fully fallible, human being that does judgment? And that's where this whole part comes into it. It's accepting those, the parts where we're human. If you look at all behaviors, we've got them all. We've got access to all of the behaviors. And the more triggered we are by a certain behavior, whether it's jealousy, narcissism, judgment, disrespect, all the rest of it, it's having a look at how much do you judge yourself and not allow yourself to be that or to do that. But you do it because you're human. It's inevitable. And so this is really the work, so as people, as clients come and they notice things happening more and more in the moment, it's kind of asking myself the question then is where might this be me? Yeah, that's really the key to it. And then you can journal, meditate, all the rest of it, it comes as it comes. You may have realizations, but it's really important that we're seeing, these things play out in action a lot of the time, because that's where they are. And the more sometimes, I can say to clients, and, they either do this or don't do this. And this was part of my experience, but go and put yourself in front of that person that you're saying you really want to avoid. There's your real practice. Sit yourself in front of that person, and as they sit there talking about themselves for half an hour and you're sitting there in your head going, I just can't bear to be around them because they're just talking about them. It's just watch yourself in that. Where are you now talking to yourself for half an hour in your head as they're talking to themselves? Well, we're doing the same thing in that moment. We're both talking to ourselves in theory. Well, can you sit there and maybe, find some compassion for them that maybe doesn't have a lot of self-awareness, that there's other people around, maybe they've had some experiences in their life where they weren't heard and now you're listening to them, it's all of this kind of work. It's kind of like the forgiveness of self in theory, to be able to kind of forgive their behaviors, acceptance, let's say, of self. And then in turn, we can accept others more.
This is really interesting. And a lot of it is too because behavior is so difficult to change. And
Yeah.
I would love to know from you, from all of the experience that you've had in this work and just working with your clients, and of course, doing the self work on yourself too. What do you believe has been the ultimate trigger for people to say enough is enough? I actually want to change the behavior. What type of stage? I know there's different phases, right? Like what type of stage do people need to be in for them to actually want to take action?
Yeah, and that varies from person to person. So it's different. Some people may have hit some really rock bottom kind of, they've had an episode of something happen one weekend or whatever, and it's brought them in, into some work. For other people, mostly I'd say it's more common for the type of clients that I have is there's an uncomfortability there. There's something that, is just uncomfortable and they're not really sure what it is and what's going on, but they've had enough now. But it's not necessarily some rock bottom. I think a lot of those maybe those more rock bottom kind of moments maybe take people more into maybe therapy or going to AA, some sort of addiction, that kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas coaching, I don't really get people, that they've had some really extreme extreme stuff happen. It's mostly more there's something uncomfortable now, and I don't want to live, I don't want to carry on living like this. I want to start to understand myself. I want to understand myself more. And I think that is the difference probably between some of the other modalities and coming into something like coaching. If you've got someone that's had some massive addiction and stuff, sometimes coaching can be a bit too much as a starting point, and you might want to go and do some of those other things. Some people come in, they go, I'll have clients come in and they'll say, I'm having problems in my relationship. I don't know whether to stay in it or not, or I'm having problems with my boss or staff at work. And so they come in with something, but what they get from it is so much more than what they thought they ever could. So once we start to pick apart whether they should be with their partner or they shouldn't be, we might get to a point of they're not, they don't fully trust themselves to make a decision. They're constantly back and forth in their head. So now we're working on a program of distrust, of what we call internal mismatching, which is second guessing ourselves. So we don't work on the relationship. We work on where else does that show up in life. And they'll go, oh, when I go to a restaurant, I don't know what to order on a menu. It takes me half an hour. When I go into a shop, I'm back and forth. Should I buy this? Should I not? So it's less about the decision about whether I should be with the partner or not, and more about working on starting to trust self. So starting to go out and just pick something that you first see on the menu instead of spending half an hour with it. Yeah. So then what we're doing is we're starting to change the neural pathways in our mind so that we're now more decisive rather than this old program of flip-flopping. Yeah.
Right.
And so once they get more comfortable in trusting self, then they make the decision of whether they want to be with their partner or not. It's not something that we necessarily, sit and work on for weeks and weeks. We work on trusting themselves, and then they make their decision. I've seen some mad things happen without us even talking about them specifically. But because we've talked about the distrust and we've done practices on more, smaller day-to-day things, they've made decisions and they've come back the next week. And I'm like, wow, that was quick. These life-changing decisions like moving countries or whatever. And it's like, who is this person? Wow, you're a fast learner.
That's amazing. Well, I'm so grateful for the work that you do, Anita, and thank you for sharing it with us. Now, if anyone wanted to just get a hold of you and learn more about shadow work, what does that process look like?
So contact me, I was going to say, on either Facebook. We'll have obviously my handles there, Facebook or Instagram. Send me a DM, check out my pages. There's a lot of information on there. With my name, Anita Tomecki. You find me on every social media platform with my name, and feel free to DM me. I never don't respond to DMs. So if anyone wants to ask me anything or speak to me, then just send me a message, and I'm happy to obviously have a chat. So, and I really want to add, this is one really important thing about shadow work, and maybe not something that you'll see on the internet as much, because this is kind of, the internet's catching up with things now. 7 years ago when I learned about this, none of these articles were out there. So it's beautiful to see it's being more and more put out there now. People are learning about this stuff, but also that it's not only negative shadow, there's also golden shadow. So anything that triggers in you that you are in awe of someone about, that's a part of you as well. So it's not just the negative feelings. It's also when you fall in love with someone, for example, you are falling in love with the parts of yourself that you see in them that you love. When you're in awe of someone in a professional capacity and people go, oh, no, that can't be me because they're earning so much more money than me, or they've got so many more followers, or blah, blah, blah. But there's still some sort of drive within you that they've got as well. We're only ever referencing ourselves as that first point of contact. So whether it's good or bad, the negative or positive emotions that we experience in the face of someone, take a look at it and ask yourself, where is that me? And own the beautiful parts as well as the ugly. It's all part of this work.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that too, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the negative that we don't even look at the positive side of it. And for me, I had no idea there was a positive. So thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been amazing to meet you.
Yes, you too. Talk soon. Queen, thank you so much for tuning in. It truly warms our heart that you're taking the time out of your day to connect with us. If you'd like to connect with our guests further, you can find their information located in the description section of this episode. And if you found this episode helpful, share with another queen, and don't forget to connect with the Holistic Sister Circle on Instagram and Facebook. And until next week, Stay blessed.